The first keynote centers on the concept of low frequency, a strategic shift away from the relentless broadcasting that has come to define modern life. In 2026, the digital and social landscape has reached a saturation point where the constant need to be seen, heard, and validated acts as a drain on your most valuable resource, your creative and emotional energy. When you operate at a high frequency, you are essentially on at all times, reacting to every notification, responding to every slight, and performing for an audience that is often distracted and indifferent. This leads to a state of chronic superficiality where you are spread so thin that you lose the depth required for true mastery or personal transformation. By consciously choosing to lower your frequency, you aren't becoming invisible. You are becoming intentional, shifting your focus from the horizontal plane of more to the vertical plane of deep. Strategic silence serves as a protective barrier for your growth, allowing you to incubate ideas and habits without the corrosive influence of premature feedback or the pressure of public expectation. We often feel an impulse to share our goals the moment we conceive them, because the instant gratification of a like provides a dopamine hit that mimics the feeling of achievement. However, this social validation is a phantom victory that often kills the actual drive needed to see the task through to completion. When you stay silent during the building phase, you allow the internal pressure to mount until it has no choice but to be released through the actual execution of your work. This creates a breakthrough that is grounded in reality rather than one that evaporates as soon as the screen goes dark. Operating at a low frequency also changes how you interact with the world around you, transforming your presence from one of noise to one of gravity. When you stop participating in the frantic exchange of opinions and the race to be the first to speak, you begin to observe the patterns that others miss because they are too busy preparing their next rebuttal. Silence in 2026 is a form of social currency that signals self-possession and high status. It suggests that you are not desperate for attention and that your internal world is rich enough to sustain you without external noise. This posture allows you to filter out the trivialities that lead to burnout, ensuring that when you finally do choose to speak or act, your contribution carries the weight of focused contemplation. The quiet phase is where the most significant neurological and psychological recalibration occurs, as it forces you to confront your own thoughts without the buffer of constant external stimuli. Many people avoid silence because it acts as a mirror, reflecting back the anxieties and dissatisfactions they've been trying to drown out with high-frequency living. However, by leaning into this quietude, you begin to audit your own life with a level of honesty that is impossible to achieve in a crowded room. You start to see which relationships are based on genuine connection and which are merely fueled by shared noise, allowing you to prune away the dead weight. This internal clarity is the prerequisite for any meaningful breakthrough, as you cannot move toward a new destination if you are constantly being pulled off course by the winds of other people's agendas. In this era of hyperconnectivity, the mystery you cultivate by staying silent becomes a competitive advantage that keeps your opponents and even your peers guessing. When your moves are not broadcasted, your progress cannot be sabotaged by the jealousy or the well-meaning but limiting advice of others who do not share your vision. This allows you to pivot, experiment, and even fail in private, which is the only environment where true innovation can flourish without the fear of public ridicule. By the time you emerge from your low-frequency period, you aren't just presenting a new project or a new version of yourself, you are presenting a finished product that has been forged in the stillness. This makes your eventual loud moments far more impactful because they are backed by the substance of the silent work you put in while everyone else was busy talking. Ultimately, focusing on yourself and staying silent is about reclaiming your sovereignty in a world that is constantly trying to colonize your attention. It is an act of rebellion against the attention economy to decide that your life is not a product for consumption and that your growth is a private matter. As you move through 2026, remember that the most powerful engines are often the ones that run the smoothest and the quietest, moving forward with a relentless momentum that doesn't need to announce its arrival. Your silence is the space where your future is built, and your low frequency is the rhythm of a person who is no longer running for the crowd, but walking toward their purpose. By mastering the art of the quiet phase, you ensure that your breakthroughs are not just temporary flashes of light, but permanent shifts in the trajectory of your life. In 2026, the no response response is your most effective tool for reclaiming your time and emotional bandwidth in a world that demands a reaction to everything. We have been conditioned to believe that silence is an admission of guilt or a sign of weakness. But in reality, choosing not to engage is the ultimate display of self-control. Every time you are baited by a provocative comment, a digital slight, or a person committed to misunderstanding you, you are being invited into a cage match that has no winner. By declining that invitation, you aren't just avoiding a conflict. You are making a conscious decision that your peace is worth more than the satisfaction of being right. In a culture of constant noise, the person who can sit comfortably in silence while others scramble for a rebuttal is the one who truly holds the power. Your silence serves as a boundary that protects your mental energy from being hijacked by situations that do not serve your long-term goals. When you respond to every critic or participate in every argument, you are essentially telling the world that your attention is cheap and easily bought. The no response response flips this script, signaling that your focus is a premium asset reserved only for things that move the needle in your life. This isn't about being passive or fearful. It is about being strategically selective with your words so that when you do speak, your voice carries the weight of intentionality. In 2026, the most sophisticated way to handle a person trying to drain your energy is to give them exactly nothing, leaving them to sit alone with the friction they tried to create. This approach requires you to dismantle the ego's desire for the last word, which is often the very thing that keeps us trapped in toxic cycles. We often feel an urgent physical need to defend our reputation or correct a false narrative. But this impulse usually stems from an external need for validation rather than internal truth. If you know who you are and what your intentions are, the opinions of those outside your inner circle become irrelevant noise that doesn't require a fix. By staying silent, you allow the situation to breathe and often find that the fire dies out on its own when it isn't being fed by your participation. You realize that you don't owe everyone a seat at the table of your life, and you certainly don't owe them an explanation for how you choose to spend your time. The beauty of the no response response lies in its ability to reveal the true character of others without you having to say a single word. When you stop reacting, people who thrive on conflict will often escalate their behavior, exposing their own instability while you remain composed and unbothered. This creates a natural filter in your social and professional life, as those who cannot respect your boundaries will eventually drift away in search of a more reactive target. This silence acts as a mirror, reflecting the other person's energy back at them and forcing them to deal with their own emotions instead of projecting them onto you. It is a form of emotional intelligence that prioritizes long-term stability over the short-term high of a clever comeback or a heated defense. In the digital landscape of 2026, where algorithms thrive on engagement and outrage, choosing not to respond is a radical act of digital sovereignty. Every comment you ignore and every thread you walk away from is a victory for your cognitive health, allowing you to stay focused on the work that actually matters. You begin to notice that most of the things you felt compelled to respond to a year ago have absolutely no impact on your current reality. This perspective allows you to move through the world with a sense of lightness, as you are no longer carrying the heavy burden of other people's drama. You become the master of your own narrative by simply refusing to participate in any story that you didn't write yourself or that doesn't align with your values. Ultimately, mastering this keynote means understanding that your response is a gift, and not everyone is worthy of receiving it. As you focus on yourself this year, use your silence as a sanctuary where you can grow, reflect, and build without the interference of outside opinions. When you stop giving away your power through reactive speech, you find that you have an abundance of energy to pour into your own health, your family, and your personal ambitions. The no response is not about closing yourself off from the world. It is about opening yourself up to a higher quality of existence where your worth is not debated. By choosing silence in the face of triviality, you ensure that your life in 2026 is defined by your actions and your character rather than your arguments. In 2026, the shift from external noise to internal validation is the only way to survive the crushing weight of a culture that measures worth by digital metrics. We have reached a point where the crowd is no longer a physical group of peers, but a global 24-hour feedback loop that never sleeps and never stops judging. If you allow this collective voice to be the primary source of your confidence, you are essentially building your house on shifting sand. When the crowd cheers, you feel like a giant. But the moment they turn or go silent, your sense of self-worth collapses into nothing. Internal validation is the process of building a foundation on solid rock, where your opinion of yourself is the only one that carries the final vote. It is the quiet realization that you don't need 1,000 strangers to tell you that you are doing a good job if you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that you acted with integrity and purpose. The danger of living for external noise is that it forces you to perform a version of yourself that the world finds acceptable rather than the version that is true. In 2026, the pressure to conform to the latest social or professional trends is immense, and it often leads people to abandon their own intuition in favor of whatever is currently trending. When you prioritize internal validation, you reclaim the right to be unpopular if it means staying aligned with your core values. You stop checking your phone to see how your life is being perceived and start checking your heart to see how your life is being lived. This shift creates a profound sense of psychological safety because your happiness is no longer a hostage to the whims of an algorithm or the opinions of people who don't actually know your story. You become the sole architect of your identity, and that is a level of freedom that no amount of public praise can ever buy. Developing this internal compass requires a disciplined removal of the noise that we've mistaken for useful feedback. Most of what we hear from the outside world isn't constructive criticism. It is merely the projection of other people's fears, insecurities, and limited perspectives. If you depend on the crowd to tell you that you're doing well, you've handed them the remote control to your emotional state, and they will eventually use it to turn you down or shut you off. In 2026, focus on yourself means doing a deep audit of whose voices you allow into your sacred space and realizing that most of them don't belong there.